On this week's 2 Cents Tuesday, I want to explore government's relationship with numbers. Our governments appear to have a very strange relationship with numbers. This has been brought into sharper focus with the COVID-19 pandemic. Every day, for almost 2 years, we have received updates on the number of new COVID-19 cases. As time progressed, these numbers were expanded to include number of people partially and fully vaccinated, number critically and or severely ill, number hospitalized, and sadly, the number of people who have died from COVID. This focus on numbers is important because COVID-19 behavior can be predicted on the basis of science and data. Infection rates, positivity rates, and the number of people infected on a daily basis allow us to predict how the disease will progress through our population, how many people are likely to require hospitalization, and even how many are likely to die from COVID. Therefore, this should allow us to establish triggers for scaling up and scaling down our national response. However, I get the sense that instead of being proactive, the decision-making has often been reactive. How else can we explain the government telling us that they expected a spike in the numbers during the Christmas season? The CMO lamenting the fact that prior to the start of the Christmas season, she was not satisfied with our control of the COVID-19 case numbers. Yet, the government decided to relax restrictions and shorten curfew hours during the holiday season, on 2 occasions going up to 1 o'clock in the morning. This is not logical. This does not suggest that we are paying attention to what the numbers are saying to us. What is apparent is that our governments like to quote numbers, but have very little interest in understanding the narrative told by these numbers, or worse yet, in taking concrete steps to address the problems identified by the numbers. Even more scarily, in some instances, like COVID-19 deaths, deaths from vehicular accidents, and the number of homicides, they appear content to treat each new number as the new benchmark, the number they must spend no verbal effort in committing to not exceed. A case in point is the number of homicides. Last year, the record for homicides in a year stood at 60. That record was set in 2018. At the start of November 2021, when an unfortunate resident from the community of Saltibus became homicide number 57, the Commissioner of Police, speaking on what at that time was the record for homicides in a year, stated, and I quote, "I am concerned that we may surpass it. However, we will do all in our powers to ensure it remains as minimal as possible," unquote. This was reported by Sheffield Gilead in Loop News on the 5th of November, 2021. This curious statement by the Commissioner of Police, which was apparently said to reporters at a press briefing on the day of that report, begged the question whether the Commissioner only became concerned with the number of homicides when it was looking like the record would have been broken. Surely, the better way to prevent breaking the record of 60 homicides in a year would have been to spend no effort to stop homicide number 1, homicide number 11, homicide number 17, homicide number 25. You get the picture. Focusing our efforts on preventing homicides 58, 59, and 60, when we had not been able to do anything to avert the first 57, sounded unrealistic and impractical. Unfortunately, the number settled at 74, which set a new inglorious record for our country. If we are to judge from our responses in the past, the efforts of our government and its law enforcement agency this year will most likely be to ensure that we do not surpass this new number of 74, instead of taking steps to reduce the number of homicides to a number less than maybe 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, or even 10. Surely the killing of 10 people in our country is too many for 1 year. Why can't we agree that this number should be our threshold and take steps to ensure that we gradually and consistently reduce our annual homicide number over the next 10 years? Of course, this will require several policy interventions that are much broader than our police. There are so many measures that should and must be taken to reduce the propensity of some of our citizens to resort to violence to solve disputes. So many people, including myself, have written on this subject and on the steps that should be taken in our schools, our homes, our communities, within the police force, and the justice system to deal with this problem. Instead of dealing with crime and national security in a comprehensive, all-encompassing, and strategic manner, our governments, and this is governments spanning several administrations, prefer to express frustration at the rate of violent crime, point the fingers of blame everywhere but at themselves, but in the end, do very little to reverse the deadly trend. The same can be said for deaths from road accidents. Last year, 17 people perished on our roads as a result of vehicle accidents. Before the onset of COVID-19, homicides and vehicular accidents were the leading causes of death for young people in the Caribbean. So the situation is not unique to us, but these are preventable fatalities. However, I cannot remember hearing of any policies to address road safety and reduce the number of vehicle accidents. I would like to see our government and its respective public sector agencies preoccupied with developing policies and implementing measures to reduce those numbers instead of just speaking about them year after year in detached and disappointingly vacuous terms. This is how we should be using data to inform policies that improve lives, livelihoods, safety, and social cohesion. Another area where we like to quote statistics is the education sector. Every year we are told what were the cutoff marks for the various schools and what were the marks of the top performers in the common entrance exam. But are these figures used to inform policy moving forward? Are we comfortable every year with sending children who scored less than 20% in the common entrance examination onto a secondary school? Of course, we know what's going to be the outcome of most of these students. Are we okay with the number of boys who continue to drop out of secondary school before reaching Form 5 and writing exams? Do we care that almost 1/5 of the children who write CXC exams after having spent 5 years in secondary school fail to register a pass mark in any one subject? Are we not concerned that a large number of children do not benefit from early childhood learning and are deprived of adequate psychosocial stimulation during the period when their brain is most rapidly developing? We have the figures, but what are we doing with the information? How are we using the data we are collecting in our education system to make learning more effective and education outcomes more positive for our students? The number and percentages of people who are overweight or obese continue to grow every year. And with this come higher morbidity and mortality rates from diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, renal failure, stroke, and cancer. We know that because we have the data. Alcohol dependency and abuse are staring us in the face. And if we needed more proof of this, we saw it during the COVID-19 lockdowns when rum shops were closed and the sale of alcohol prohibited. Are we taking note of what the numbers are telling us and taking steps and directing policy to reduce the growing alcoholism and rising incidence of chronic non-communicable diseases in our country? Or have we resigned ourselves to the distressing fact that every year, more people are requiring dialysis? Our surgeons are spending more time dealing with diabetic foot ulcers. More livers are becoming cirrhotic, and incidence of stroke and heart disease are continuing to increase. At what point will we use the data to mount a serious national campaign against chronic non-communicable diseases? Then there are the various poverty assessments, multiple indicator cluster surveys, and other data that we routinely collect to give us information on a wide range of socioeconomic indicators. These paint a very vivid picture of the status of our vulnerable citizens. Our Department of Statistics collects data that tell us in which communities the vulnerable and at-risk populations reside. How much of this data is being used to determine policies, define programs, and design social protection interventions in our country? Sadly, we know the answers to these questions. Our governments have a curious relationship with data and statistics. They quote the numbers when they appear to give them ammunition to prove that what they're doing is working, or, equally important to them, what their predecessors did was not effective. But they do not take the time to truly understand the message being sent by the data. They do not set measurable targets for themselves for fear that their performance will be judged on their ability to meet these targets. Therefore, they underpromise in the hope that they will overdeliver and then be able to boast about what is still an underperformance. Most depressingly of all, they treat every successive bad record as the new number they should not surpass, instead of setting a goal to get our country to a place where we become the benchmark for best practice and good governance. Where are our moonshot goals? This is something I will speak about in a subsequent 2 Cents Tuesday. I continue to live in hope that one day a government will make proper use of numbers and will actually use evidence and data to make decisions and set policies that redound to the benefit of everyone, and in particular, the disadvantaged and dispossessed among us. When that happens, we will all be the better for it, and our society will evolve from one that relies less on opinion and superstition and more on science and fact and numbers. Thank you for listening to another 2 Cents Tuesday. Goodbye.